So, Lieutenant Governor is in the house. Good morning, sir.
Good
Delbert
morning,
Hosemann.
Paul.
How are you?
I'm doing good.
My goodness gracious.
It's month 7 of the session.
Is this the first time? It probably is first time where we went into a new fiscal year and you guys were still in session.
To the best of my knowledge, yeah. I think they may have been some callbacks over the years where they had to call them back in for something they didn't agree on.
But that would be a special session.
Yeah,
for the most part.
We're still here, man.
And it looks like how much longer, as far as you know?
I'm hopeful today.
Was that it?
That today is the day. I have really pushed hard, and it's start of our new fiscal year for the state, and we've still got some matters to address. But the last appropriations bill, so we'll start this morning, and hopefully we'll be done today.
So you still have some appropriation bills?
Just the last of the ones. We did several yesterday, but we still have several.
So you're okay as far as calendar, since this is the new fiscal year?
Yes,
you have today to do that?
Today's the day. And we are also doing all the CARES money. The remaining $300 million, we gave $300 million to small businesses, transferred those over, and that's going really well. Last I had, I think over 15,000 Mississippi businesses had applied for that. And now we're doing the rest of the CARES money, which is a phenomenal thing. The schools got $150 million for every kid to have, every child to have an iPad or a Chromebook. That's just a tremendous thing for Mississippi. You talk about looking forward to the future. That was just a key thing for me. We got another $150 million for broadband and technology at the schools. So we'll have thousands. Our co-ops have been wonderful. We'll have thousands and tens of thousands of homes with children in them that now, if we come back to this distance learning, they'll have access to the internet.
Yeah.
They never had before. So I'm real proud of the legislature spending that money on that kind of thing. Hospitals, cities and counties get $70 million to hopefully cover all of their expenses on this corona thing. So really well thought out, I think, expenditure of those funds.
I think Scott's coming on. Scott Bounds is going to be with me at 8:07, and they got $50 million as far as the. Did that go to the individual electric co-op power associations?
$75 million.
They got $75 million. What's this $50 million I hear? They transferred $50 million.
There's $75 million with a match, Paul. So that's a 50-50 match. So it's $150 million worth of broadband, and then there's another $50 million that is going directly to the school so they can set up their technology in that and have distance learning and all the technology that goes with distance learning coming out of the schools themselves.
Gotcha.
So all the schools across Mississippi now will be capable of sending out their coursework online or through Wi-Fi located on the building, if kids can come to the parking lot, that kind of thing. Very, very innovative move forward here.
It is amazing, though, because the mundane part of this, as far as what you have to go through, just for legally to get all these things appropriated and all one after the other.
That's correct.
And it has to be done, but it was a long list of them yesterday. You guys worked a long time.
Hospitals, I think, were $80 or $100 million to help them make it through the day. And all of the money was spent according to the CARES funds or appropriated according to the CARES requirements. Now, some of those don't make up for losses for the cities. They still had a lot of tax losses. But we did pretty good, Paul. I heard you on the way in. At the end of the day, we basically broke even in the state. Just got the numbers in.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Well, what we do is we always allocate 98% of the income. Mm-hmm. And so we've got a 2% cushion, and this year we used all of that cushion. But basically, with that cushion, we about broke even.
So we're talking about, you don't have the numbers with you?
Yeah, I have them.
Let's look at the numbers there, because when you start thinking about it, this is with businesses shutting down?
Yeah. We had, for the year, we were, rough numbers now, these are not down to the penny.
Got you.
We were $5.76 million was the amount that we had, and we collected $5.8 million, so we were about $59 million over our expenses for the year.
Jeez.
And we have a 2%, about $120 million that we don't allocate. So we got into that a little bit, but we didn't go to zero, which is really, really good. And for last month, we actually broke even again, collected $751 million compared to $739 million in our budget.
How about that? That takes some pressure off the rainy day fund?
No. It does take some pressure off the rainy day fund. It means we got out of this year without having to go into the rainy day fund. I think we'll have to go into it this year coming up, starting today.
Will the way we did the income tax, spending some of that money, is that going to play out in the future?
It helps a lot. Some people went on and filed. We had about 84% of the tax returns in. The last 16%, of course, people owed money. And some of those drifted in during this year, and I think that's what made us break even. We should collect a lot more on the 17th. We're projecting somewhere around $250 million has been pushed to the next year. So, and that could be 300, 200. It just depends on how much people are paying now. We should have some of that to offset this coming year's deficit, because we anticipated, and most of our agencies took a 5% cut, except for education. It was much less than that.
I was looking at one of the bills here, because if you look at the votes on most of these things, it was just almost ceremonial, because Mississippi Major Impact, Economic Impact Authority, 52 yeas, no nays. Senate adopted the conference report. That was the major that was the Impact Authority.
That's correct.
Now, and that's, tell me exactly how that's going to be formed.
The dollars out of that end up through MDA, and they get out to startup businesses, those kinds of things. They have different
incubator
pools of money,
type thing?
ACE money that goes in there, and others that are basically economic development. That's correct.
There was one, and this is probably the one that was 1387 was contested the most, 25 yeas, 19 nays, and that was the Mississippi Workforce Incentive Act of 2020.
That's correct.
Why was there some problems with that, or some disagreement?
Well, there was some disagreement about how we're going to do our workforce. Paul, before this year, that was one of the things that I was really anxious about. We were disparate in our workforce development. We had a SWIB board that had like 43 people on it, and it just didn't really work well. It was a good first step, I thought, but it didn't work well. And we wanted a workforce czar to handle all of the workforce development money that we spend, making sure so many of our people, Paul, are out of work right now, coming back into the workforce, but their jobs may not be the same. So it was very big on us that we had some central location, which Patrick Sullivan was appointed by the governor to handle his post. And so we have reorganized how we're going to do workforce development, which is, basically continuing education.
This bill's going to do that?
Yes, and you'll see a much more streamlined faction. You'll have one appointed by the governor. Then the speaker and I think, point 2 or 3 people to that board. And they will actually keep up with all of this workforce development.
Because you literally have millions upon millions of dollars from the feds coming in for that effort.
We do.
And it goes out through the community colleges. It goes out through a lot of different agencies.
That's correct.
Will all the money come into one entity and be?
That's where we're headed, to have this one board. The SWIB board basically continued to exist, but we streamlined it tremendously, cut it to 7 members in an executive committee. 7 or 9, I can't remember right now. And then 26, we went from 43 to 26 on an advisory board. And then we hired an executive director, basically to keep up with all of the different ones. We have community colleges, which had done a good job. Then we had all kinds of other people doing training. I mean, it was just thrown all over everywhere. And so we really wanted to get a hold on that. So we want duplicating services, and second of all, that we were meeting the needs of people who are coming back and having to be re-educated for a job skill.
Well, this really came to focus with the DHS debacle that went on over there.
Yes.
So we understand, is each agency going to have to do an RFP for this, or put it in their budget?
Each one will
every year, and they come to the SQUID boards, and this is what we need for workforce development.
Very close to that. Yes, we'll look at all the.
How will private entities do that? How will nonprofits do it?
Well, the same way. I mean, if you come to me and say I've got a new business and I need to get it trained, we can train them through the junior college. We could train them through something else. There'll be distance training. There'll be a lot of different ways to train people to go to work.
Does the bill address performance based on this, as far as the nonprofits are concerned?
Everything is going to be performance based as long as I'm there. As long as you leave me there, you can assure I'll be looking for performance.
I want to ask you that. Also,
we're not going to do business as usual anymore. Now, I've had to struggle a good bit with pandemics and everything else, but we are very going to
We'll take it up on the other side. I also want to ask you about the liability shield for healthcare businesses and products. It's a bill that's going to be taken care of today. We'll talk about that more with the Lieutenant Governor coming up next. And in the studio, it is the Lieutenant Governor, Delbert Hosemann. Let me get this one out of the way before we talk about the flag here. Okay. This bill that is SB 3049, the liability shield for healthcare businesses. That's still out there. It has the support of BIPAC and MEC.
And us, too. Yeah. That basically, during the emergency order, that shields our healthcare workers from getting sued, just basically. When they're going into the hospital like that and taking care of people, and it's spread over to businesses and things like that, so that when you're under an emergency order like the governor issued, that basically you have to have a very strong standard to get sued. You have to do willfully make somebody have the coronavirus. And we just didn't want our healthcare workers, first responders, ambulance drivers, those kind of people who subject some kind of liability that they gave somebody COVID when it's just, first of all, you can't hardly prove it anyway. But we thought during this, whatever it is, been 90-day period, that should be removed.
The bill that Nancy Pelosi had out, I know this has nothing to do with that subject, but the bill that Nancy Pelosi had out that would take away that immunity for a police officer, most people said who had any brains at all, that was a non-starter. You can't do that because any police officer who stopped someone and made them 10 minutes late at work is going to find a lawyer. And who in the hell would take that job and understand that the chances are about 99% if you did what you're supposed to do, you're going to be sued.
We didn't waste any paper on that, Paul.
Good. Take me through what you were feeling and this episode that happened in such a rapid time as far as this flag is concerned.
Well, we all started struggling with the flag probably about 3 weeks ago, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. There had been discussions, Paul. This wasn't new. There had been bills filed. That wasn't new. But gradually, as we watched men get murdered in the streets in Minneapolis and other things that were going on in the country, it refocused us on one issue that we had in Mississippi and had for 125 years, which was the Confederate battle flag in the corner of our flag. And everybody started discussing that, and what's since 1965 anyway, we have been going to school together, voting together. There about 25% of the Senate is African Americans, and we have these friendships. I mean, people have built up relationships, and as they started to talk about that and what it meant to 35 or 40% of the people that live in Mississippi, it became obvious to those of us who were not African Americans that this was a tremendous impediment to us going forward to the future. And so we started those discussions. At first, we didn't have the votes. There's no secret about that, I don't think. And as we came along to discussions and whatnot, so we started to build, and we started to get more and more and more. And then it came time for cast the ballot, and more Republicans and Democrats voted to change the flag. 21 Republicans. This was a Republican-led. Our head of our party, the Republican Party, Lucian, came out for this, Lucian Smith. And you found our governor, Governor Bryant, was strongly in favor of this, so many others. Then Lynn Fitch and I and Chad White all came out in favor of this, and Mike Cheney. So your statewide elected officials were coming out in favor of making this change. But even with that, it was difficult because we just had an election.
On that Saturday, which will go down in history, from what we saw watching you on the internet, you looked a little nervous as far as counting.
I was counting on my fingers.
You were counting on your fingers.
I did that.
With the digital, in the age of digital, he was.
I didn't know you could see that.
Oh yeah, we were watching that. And I said, at least he's not using an abacus, but
close.
But I mean, it was close.
It was very close. And
tell me about some of that. What? I know you can't talk about some of the conversations, but what happened to maybe bring one or two people over that that you thought maybe this wasn't going to happen. That would have been a monumental failure.
I know sometimes, Paul, you have to make risks for what you just think's right. I thought it was a time to do that, and we were very close. We had votes moving in the last hour, and I really didn't know whether we were going to make it, but we did.
So when you're, especially on 2/3, you got to figure how many people there and
35,
everything else.
And we ended up having 36, and so it was, and a lot of those were very tough votes. You should be so proud of your senators, Paul. They wrestle with this because they were getting inundated with hundreds and thousands of. One of them got 10,000 text messages and
10,000 text messages,
emails, and 10,000 emails, and so they were really struggling with this. And some people were very adamant about it, but. Both sides, actually. And polls were showing that now people wanted to change it, and it had picked up momentum. And it came down to just counting one at a time. And I had my sheet up there, and I was looking, and we had a couple change during the vote. So it was pretty amazing to me to watch that happen, to watch people grapple with what is in their heart and what their political future may be.
You seemed to be a little choked up when you announced the.
I did. Phil Bryant used to get on me. We're getting older, and we feel so fervently about something. We do get choked, and I did. And I was thinking, Paul, I was standing in front of these people while they were making such a critical decision. I knew how important it was to 3 million Mississippians, not just one minority group. This all 3 million of us. And I thought about my children and my grandchildren and, how this would affect them. And then, Paul, my great-grandfather fought in Corinth and was captured at Vicksburg. And I have a copy of his letter to the President of the United States. In July 1865, he wrote President Johnson in his own handwriting, beautiful cursive, asking for a pardon and apologizing for his transgressions and asking to be restored to full citizenship. Now, I've got that letter. And here we were, 1865, 150 years later, and his great-grandson is standing over this, presiding over this affair. And it was just a lot to think about. And I think you'd be proud of Mississippi.
Also, irony that the party of Lincoln was the party that got it done.
Well, the party of Lincoln came back again. If it wasn't for Republicans, we look at the vote. We had 71% vote for this, and it was a great majority of them were Republicans. And without a Republican, of course, this has never gotten done. The Democrats are in the minority.
Well, there are people, and I don't think this is going to be solved or salved over for a while. Mike in Brookhaven, Paul Cash brought them over. I've been doing politics for a long time, and Mike, I just, and if it was, I would say it, but it wasn't Cash in here that brought him over. Why would somebody say something like this? Because Mike's not the first person. It was money behind the scenes. Who the hell? Where was the money? There's money behind the scenes on some things.
Well, first of all,
this is not one of them.
First of all, we're broke this year, so there wasn't any money to spread around. But second of all, I made not one promise of one event, one chairmanship, $1. To any person in there. This was bigger than that. I mean, on things like feelings, you can't ever tell anybody their feelings are wrong, Paul. Feelings are their own personal things and things that they believe in. And I had 2 or 3 just heartfelt discussions with people who did not vote with me about what they thought and how they felt they had to represent their people, and they couldn't do this. And I mean, they struggle. People struggle.
I understand that. And the other part, and I've said it when John Horn was on with me and when the speaker was on, I disagreed with some of the opposition's speeches on the floor, but at least they were gentlemanly, or they were. There was not a lot of hollering and screaming and everything else. Everything went down, and everybody got their viewpoint across, shook hands, or at least fist bumped, and left. So I thought that was good.
This was the Senate at its finest hour,
think so.
Paul. I was so proud of those men and women that struggle with that. And I can tell you, our first vote this year was unanimous for a raise in teacher pay raise. I mean, we have got a cohesive group now. Mississippi is going to go forward like we haven't in a long time, I think.
I want to ask you in the final segment here about one of the other bills coming up. And we'll talk about that and your preference for the flag, the design, because I got a great one yesterday. I want to show it to you. I'll show it to you. There's so many out there. I think I'm going to post
grandchild or something.
No. I don't even know. This guy was a Mississippian living out of state.
Fantastic.
Somebody show it to me.
Tell him to bring it on.
But we need all kinds. Back with more. With this final segment, I got to ask you a couple of other things. By the way, the commission is coming out and everybody will appoint somebody.
I was there for the signing ceremony last night with the governor, and we now have the bill. So what you'll see, I have my 3 people that I'm going to appoint to the commission, and very proud of each of them. We'll be announcing that tomorrow so they can get to work on the flag. And Paul, the flag is going to be selected by the people. I thought that was really important. So they're going to be a commission. They're going to come up with a flag. They're going to put it on the ballot, and the people in Mississippi are going to vote on it. And if they don't like that one, we'll put up another one until they find one they like.
And I think there will be some creative ones on there, too.
So we're going to get the little kids will send them
They're
in.
not locked into anything.
No, I'm just really excited. I think we'll come up with some unusual designs, some historical ones, and the only thing the legislature asked them to do is respect our past and look forward to the future. Other than that, they got "And in God We Trust," which I push for.
I have several people asking me about SCR 586. This is suspending the deadline for the purpose of requesting a drafting or introduction to a passage for a medical marijuana act.
Yeah, I think that died yesterday, Paul. Quite frankly, I'll look this morning when I get back.
So you don't know if it's dead or not?
I think it is dead. And,
what would that?
We'd had to suspend the rules like we just had to do for the flag, which is a tough vote anyway.
So you'd have to have a 2/3 on this?
You have to be able to suspend the rules and do anything, yeah.
Are you guys worried about what's going to happen as far as that initiative is concerned, though? I mean, because I know the people at the health department, they are.
Yeah, they're
because it looks like it's going to pass, unless something happens.
It may or may not. I don't know. But the one that is very lengthy about going into the Constitution is bothersome, Paul. You really need to leave the legislature some room. If people want medical marijuana, they can vote it in. But the legislature did a competitive one that's much shorter and more distinct than the one that was put on by referendum. So people get a choice like everything else. We'll vote on it, and I'll respect the will of the people.
Well, what worries most people is, believe it or not so much that we would have medical marijuana, it's just the governing edicts that are placed in their
sale
bill.
And all of that. You got to be very careful about that. I'm very concerned that we not have marijuana on a regular basis out there. There are people who are dying or sick or have glaucoma. There's certain medical necessities, I think, could use marijuana. We just want to make sure that
all of a sudden,
medical necessity.
You've got some potheads taking over part of Seattle or part of Benoit, Mississippi.
We don't need that. We don't need that. But somebody that's really ill and this will help them, or with their eyesight or whatever, I think clearly most Mississippians believe if you've got something like that, they ought to have access to it.
So you think there is a possibility to sine die? Well, you wouldn't be sine die.
We're not going to sine die. Today will probably be our final day. We'll finish our appropriations, and then we have carefully drafted our resolution to go out this afternoon so that we're coming back in October if we get any money from the feds. Now, there's a lot of rumor that they're going to put some more money into a lot of different things like cities and counties, that kind of thing, and hopefully an infrastructure bill, which we desperately need in Mississippi. So we're hoping that one of those will occur sometime between now and November when the election comes. And if that is occurrence, we've left time for us to come back and do that.
Well, the good news is, and again, if you've just joined us, the Lieutenant Governor said the numbers for June are in, and you were saying...
And basically broke even.
and that's good news.
Yeah, compared to where we were, we lost $240 million, I think, in April, or we were below estimates. And so we had very good limped out of this year, just basically neutral, using our 2% set aside, which is a 2% you never appropriate, but 98% of the money.
Word is that the Athletic Association, we're talking about schools and sports as far as football is concerned, we don't know where we are as far as the school districts on school resuming at all or at the normal time.
I know, and I am so worried. We had 1,000 cases show up, Paul. We are not out of this. And if people don't socially distance, don't wash your hands, don't use sanitizer, don't wear a mask, If you don't do that, you're basically saying, I hope I infect you. And I think people ought to socially say, I'm sorry you don't care about my life enough to wear your mask. So I think we really have to be careful here. We've got fraternity parties going on, and they're all catching the virus, and people, all kinds of different groups. I just want to remind everybody that if you want school next year, you better wear your mask, and you better take care of making sure you're not in big crowds and whatnot. So it's very difficult for people. They say the sun has come out in the summer and it's hot, and we don't have any problem. But look we have had huge spikes, over 1,000 cases in one day, and a lot of deaths that go with that. So I would so encourage people to be careful, and otherwise we may not have a football season.
The new cases reported yesterday were 680. The total cases so far since the 11th of March, 27,067. The additional deaths that were added on, 14. Total deaths in the state, 1,073. We had 560 people in hospitals with confirmed infections across the state. We have 91 on ventilators in the state and 167 in ICUs, and that's the latest numbers from yesterday.
Very difficult, and we're not out of this, and everybody has to pay particular attention. You're taking care of your neighbor if you wear a mask.